Hello, this is The Lost Adventure, and today we're going over B6, The Veiled Society. Written back in 1984 by David Zeb Cook, a man who has done many works for early TSR and even went on to help work on the video game Fallout 2, The Veiled Society is designed for 3 to 6 characters at levels 1 to 3. We are surmising here, it doesn't actually suggest a party size, but it does include up to 7 pre-generated characters. The entire adventure takes place in this city called Specularum, and it revolves around 3 main families, or sort of like factions, vying for the leader's favor, who's a duke. Now, what we mean by this is the duke is like the leader of this entire country, and his capital is this city called Specularum. And these 3 families exist within this city and are sort of like vying for his favor and attention. So, these 3 factions, the first one is the Radu. These guys are centered around the waterfront and walled districts. Think of them as sort of like a mob faction, like the mafia sort of organization. And none of them are nobility. Most of them are commoners. The second faction is called the Terensku. It's a noble family that has lost some of its influence since its main patriarch died. Though it is actually waning in power, they are still somewhat influential just on the basis of them being nobility. And the final faction is the Vorlai family. They are nobility from outside the city, and their head of the family is a baron who is quite intelligent. The Terensku and the Radu are at odds with each other constantly, while the Vorlai are mainly stuck in the middle of their little feud they have going on. And the Vorlai, the baron that's in charge of it, his entire plan to gain the attention and favor of the Duke is to pretty much make it so the other 2 don't completely mess up everything in the city. If he can mitigate the mess that they make, he will gain favor with the Duke. So that's his entire plan. He has no major things going on here. He's just trying to keep the peace. The other 2, they are in a constant feuding war. And of course, all this feuding boils down to money and trade. Not just the Duke's attention, but gaining his favor helps out with the money and the trading. This adventure has no random encounters. Zeb suggests that if PCs want to go off to do something like find somebody common like a blacksmith or a street urchin, the DM should be able to make up a very easy encounter for them to be able to do this. Nothing too complicated. Don't let them find a level 20 magic item store. That'll be ridiculous. But they can find a blacksmith or a regular shopkeeper easily enough. Also, due to the players' levels of around 1 to 3, they have very little chance of gaining any sort of audience with nobility in this city at this time. But this adventure will introduce the players to a lot of influential people and nobles that could be useful further on in your campaign. We forgot to add there's actually a 4th faction that's in play here. It's not really in play, it's actually part of one of the other factions. And their name is actually on the title of the book, The Veiled Society itself. Think of them like your standard Thieves and Assassins Guild. These guys are actually the secret arm of the Radu family. I'm still trying to determine if I should call them Radu or Radu. We're going to stick with Radu. Now, the adventure booklet is 16-ish double pages of content. So 32 pages altogether, that sort of stuff. However, they are implementing a sort of special cutout section in the book, which takes up about half of the pages. These cutouts are mainly houses, walls, and characters, reminiscent of AC3 and AC8, though we would say that these ones are the opposite of AC3 and AC8, where in AC3 and AC8, the selling point was the props themselves, not the adventure. The adventure was the extra part included with your 3D tiles that you got. With this one, the adventure is the main part, and the props are used to, sort of enhance the experience. So anyways, back to the said adventure. We start off with a usual board guard having to deal with the new visitors, also known as the players. His lack of interest in the players is made apparent because he is mainly interested in the ongoing, festival procession that is going on inside the city. This is the party's first real encounter in the adventure. The players will witness a disturbance at the front of the procession where two men are arguing with one of the front, they got the poles, the bearers that's leading the procession. As the procession goes on, the argument goes from just mainly yelling and calling each other Radu scum or Terensku filth. It will then go into a straight physical confrontation where the guy that's the pole bearer is going to go ahead and take his pole and hit one of the two people blocking the procession. Now, the two people blocking the procession are actually members of the Radu family, while the guys that are in the procession are part of the Terensku family. The entire plan, the sort of crappy plan that came up by the Radu, was if they can mess up this procession that the Terensku are leading, they'll be able to make them look bad in front of the Duke, thus lowering the amount of, favors that they get. It's a pretty weak plan. This does give the opportunity for the players to get in with either one of the parties. They can jump in and either help the two guys that are, blocking the procession, or they can help out the guy that whacked them with the pole, which will gain them favor with the Terensku family. If the players decide to do neither, these guys with green uniforms will show up and break up the fight and, restore peace and order to the festival. These guys in green are actually Vorlai servants. Now, anyone who buys this book and wants to run it, make sure you read the box sections that are inside the adventure, because the normal bold ones, the bold lettering inside the boxes, that's the general player setup and description of the area. There's other box text that is italicized. These sections are important for the DM because it's the inner dialogue that's going on between the lead members of the Radu family, which gives the Dungeon Master an insight into what's going on in the background leading to the situations that the players have to deal with. After they deal with the whole fight situation in front of the procession, things get a little bit more complicated. The book actually has the party being split into two separate ends, which is completely the opposite of what's taught to people nowadays of never splitting the party. This book wants you to split the party. This is done to facilitate the party being contacted by the Veiled Society and the Terensku family. This is a setup that's necessary for later on in the adventure. Now, you could just decide if the players helped out one of the factions in the front, that they're just going to work with that one singular faction. It'll take a little bit of work, but it won't be that hard. You have to add a little bit of extra stuff later on in the adventure, but it's pretty simple. That's the way that I would go, personally. Because trying to run two, separate adventures at the same time is a little bit too complicated for me to pay attention to. You can run it either or. I mean, he does make it so you could run two separate opposing parties. But they're only opposing sometimes, not all the time. You'll see what I'm talking about later on. So the players get contacted by the two different factions, and they go to sleep. The next day, when the players meet up in the morning, an old lady will come running into the inn, this really old lady, crying out for help because she says there's demons living in her basement. Now, the innkeeper, being a nice guy, walks up to her and tries to comfort her as she's screaming and begging for help to deal with the demons in her basement, and he'll hold up a gold coin while looking at the players, be like, hey, help out this old crazy lady. I mean, I'll give you some gold if you go down to her basement and get rid of the rats, right? If the players don't take him up on this offer, he's going to be kind of bothered by it, and he'll kind of lean in and say, or I could just say how cowardly you are and say you never paid your bills and you're completely blacklisted from any inn and you aren't going to get no adventuring contracts because you're crap. Now, obviously, this is railroading your players into the next step of the adventure, but it's a pretty good railroad. The players will go into the basement of this old lady's house, and they'll find that someone has actually tunneled a hole on both sides of, like, her cellar. And those holes will lead to a series of locations. There's like 6 or 7 of them down here. You got some hobgoblins with some like naked prisoners that are digging holes. You got some kobold explorers. You have a leaking like sewage pipe and refuse pipe. So that's just the disgusting part. There's an entire group of zombies that could trap the players, and there's 2 and 7 are connected. Now 2 is the important one. 2 is where the players will find a couple masked guys wearing hoods with a sack, a bloody sack, trying to bury it. This is the corpse of a woman. She's been murdered. The 2 people that are with the bag aren't her murderers. It took me a little bit of time to figure this out, but these 2 aren't the murderers. Those ones you'll figure out later. Number 7 is there's a guy that comes down the stairs. He's not really well explained either, but he's also a member of this hooded veiled society. So anyways, once they go to 2, there's an entire part where they can report the murderers, they capture these guys and try and question them. What happens if the players don't report the murder and how they're suspects of the like murder investigation, because the woman that's in the sack is actually a member of the Vorlai family. She is the daughter of one of their well-to-do merchants, Fortunato Vorlai. 2 is actually the basement of that house. So if the players don't mention the murder to the authorities, servants will discover the murderer and find the trail and find it, and it'll all end up tracing back that the adventurers had gone down into the tunnels. They'll be arrested and under investigation for the murder of this Lucia, which is her name. As long as the players are willing to agree to like a clerical tribunal, the standard lie detector sort of test stuff, it'll come out that they're not guilty. However, should the players decide that they're not gonna work with the tribunal, they'll be hanged. It says it right in the book, to kill them in a week. Once the players are found to not be guilty, they're brought into the investigation and they go to the Vorlai house. Now, what happens with the bad guys you find in 2 and 7, it doesn't really say. The only clue that I find in here is when you confront the people in 2, the 2 individuals will look at you and say that you need to release them, otherwise the Veiled Society will harm them, which means they're connected to the Veiled Society. These guys don't have any information. We'll just leave it at that. They don't really have any information to give to the PCs if they are questioned, because it doesn't really say anything beyond that. I mean, there's other parts where you do get some information, but this is not one of them. Now back to the Vorlai house. So you're at the house, right? You find there's a bunch of blood all over the place, and it looks like that she tried to write some lettering on the floor before she died. You can't make out the letters. You can figure out there's 3 letters. The only one you can really tell is an A, and the other 2 are a mix of B, R, O, and D. Also found is some strands of red hair, which are found underneath the fingernails of Lucia. There's some like rope that appears to have been used to strangle her, and there's some tar on like a ladder that was used to escape the location. Oh, and the last clue is there's a ring that's found there. It's a Terenscu signet ring, so you know exactly where this is going. It looks like that she was killed by a member of the Terenscu family because she had just recently spurned the advances of one of their family members. This family member goes by the name of Stefanos Terenscu. It's not really important, but this could be a direction your players could go in if they want to. It's not covered in the book. You see, what had actually happened was a member of the Radu family kind of got irritated that the first mission to mess with the Terenscu family didn't go well. The whole blocking the procession and making them look bad didn't go as well as they could. and plus the Vorlai were starting to interfere. So this one planned something a little bit more extravagant and wanted to try and kill two birds with one stone. He decided to try and kill a member of the Vorlai family, since he doesn't like them meddling with their entire situation they have going on, while also setting up the Terenscu family for the murder. Like I said, the two guys that are found trying to bury the body are not the murderers. And neither is the guy that was coming down from 7. He is also not the murderer, and these guys won't have any information on who the other members of the Veiled Society is. You might be able to get the location of the guild, but that's up to, you as the DM to decide if you want to give it away that early, because that location is the final part of this entire adventure. Now, after the players get done with the investigation, the initial investigation, they'll go out, and the information has already been released to, the public, the people outside, the citizens to figure out that the Terenscus have done it, and there's an agitator agitating the crowd by saying stuff like the Terenscus can do whatever they want to in this city because they're no rich nobles, we're just poor commoners, I can't believe they got away with killing that lady. He's just egging them on until finally a riot breaks out. Zeb does do a good part in creating an entire situation where the riot is, the players can interact with the riot and their decisions can help decide the direction the riot's going to go into. If the players decide to lead the riot, fight the oppressive local city watch, they're pretty much set up to die. But there's ways for them to escape and get out of it, and maybe they'll go over to the Veiled Society side and join them. Anyways, this is just the first step. Once they get past the riot, they'll go back to their inn, where they'll have a message left for them. This will either be a message from the Terenscu family or the Radu family. And this is all connected to the first time they came to the inn, where they were contacted by like a member of one of those families. Because this is who the letter's from. This is the person who contacts them. He contacts them for a job, and if you went with the Terenscus, you'll end up meeting at the docks to meet a guy to escort him to the Duke's palace. While if you went with the Veiled Society side, you become part of the ambush party that's going to attack the guy that just came from the docks. My apologies, it's not the Duke's palace, it's some senator's residence he needs to get to. And the guy that we're talking about that's met at the docks is a member of the Terenscu family named Simeon. Players that are with the Terenscu side, which I'm going to call the good side, they will escort Simeon to the senator's house. While en route, a group of beggars from the local beggar prince that has allied himself to the Terenscu family. Like I said, the Terenscu family is sort of like on a downward spiral in effectiveness, so their allies are sometimes questionable. The beggar prince will send some beggars to help escort the party. Players that are with the Veiled Society side, they will joined by a group of Veiled Society people. And there's an ambush point. The players there's a chance the players could be ambushed by other players if that's what happens. We think it'll be a whole lot simpler just to have all the players on one side. Just our opinion on that. Just have them all on the Terenscu side. Throw some extra thugs on the Veiled Society side to even out the fight. So they'll get ambushed. The players will be ambushed along with Simeon. And there'll be a fight. Now, no one's going to be able to notice it, but the Veiled Society guys and the beggars aren't really fighting each other with maximum effort. They're kind of half-hearted in it. None of them is really hurting anybody. And anybody who's captured by another part of them just gets tied up in some fake bindings. So this is another part of the scam. The Veiled Society and the beggars are part of the ruse. Eventually, the players will be able to capture the leader of the Veiled Society guys is a red-haired guy named Flaver. And he will say that the Terenscu hired him to kill Lucia, and that they control the Veiled Society. But he will also say that he is not the murderer, and this red-haired guy does not have any injuries. So that might, throw a little twist in it for the players. Anyways, so you escort Simeon to the senator's house, and your investigation gets to continue on from this point. Either way, so the investigation goes. You have all this extra information, the false information that continues being fed into the players. And eventually, while the players are doing this whole thing, some guy from the Veiled Society is going to take a pot shot at him. When this happens is up to you. You can allow the players to investigate as much as they want to their heart's content. They're not really going to find anything, but maybe make them feel like they're looking for something. The players shouldn't know that the Veiled Society are members of the Radu. It's supposed to be covered up at this point. So anyways, the players are out doing their investigation. The Veiled Society members start freaking out about it, and one of them takes a pot shot at him, which leads to an entire chase scene. There's rules for it. He's got him inside here. The players chase this guy. They're ambushed by another 3 guys in an alleyway. They're running through a crowd. The players aren't going to be able to get any assistance from any soldiers or guards because they're currently dealing with the next day's riot that is possibly about to pop off. So it's just the PCs and these ambushers, which will eventually lead to the final encounter, which all happens at this place called the Blue Water Mead Hall. There's ways players could get to it. They could get this information from maybe the first 3 guys from the first underground encounter, the agitator from the first riot if he was captured. Any one of those could give the information that the Blue Water Mead Hall is the place of the Veiled Society, because they're all members of it, so obviously they all got to go there, right? When the players get there, they will see a man with red hair that appears to have been hurt. The players will recognize him. He will look up and see them staring at him, and he will freak out. This is a guy with red hair. He's injured, so he already is, connecting the dots that he's been caught, and he books it. He books it into the chambers of the Veiled Society, and as the players go through here, there's a few extra surprises, like they find a member of the Duke's household is currently being imprisoned in here. But the important part is the end part. Here in number 8, they find all the leaders of the Radu family. In fact, the old man has been killed by a member of the Radu family. And the last 2 are currently fighting it out over the whole, murdered leader of the Radu family that's bleeding out in the ground. The players can get involved, and this is the end of the adventure here. They'll be able to find the paperwork that connects them all to the murder. The entire Veiled Society is connected to the Radu family, and they'll be able to shut down the entire criminal network from here. Or if your players decide to, this could be, a criminal network they could take over. There are some murky parts to this adventure that took us a little while to wrap our heads around. We had a few questions, but it is pretty good. This is an excellent thing for, if you have already had your session 0 or first session, which was just an easy adventure. Well, introduce them to a city, and this is a way to get your players into contact with the people of power. Whether it's to be the Duke's family, or maybe they'll get the favor of the Terenscu family, or even the Vorlai. Doing any sort of favors in this situation will be able to lead to them being in contact with these noble, important individuals who can give them more important jobs, which gets them more respect in the future. Plus, with the elimination of the headquarters of the Veiled Society, the society ends up splitting apart, and this could be like a continual organization that the players will have to deal with as they try and get revenge for the players for killing off their entire group. We think it's a nice adventure. It's quite useful. I would have never thought of anything even like this on my own. And now we get to the final part where I rate the adventure. The adventure rating itself, we're going to go ahead and give this a 4 out of 5. It's not bad. It's quite useful. I like it. For value, we're going to give this a 4 out of 5. You can get the print on demand for $10, the PDF for $5 down at DM's Guild. I'll put the link down there. or you can buy the original copy for $40, and most of those aren't going to have the cutouts in them anymore. Just buy the print on demand. It's pretty good. I got it. It's pretty clear. For deadliness, there are a few points where death can happen, but this adventure is more of a narrative, introduction to the city that they're going to be in. We'll give deadliness, we'll give it a 3. It's average. I mean, there's points where they can definitely die. There's a part where they can run into 20 of the society members inside there, along with some higher level fighters. They could get themselves killed at that point, but they would have done that to themselves. You can't blame yourself for that. We would say altogether this is a 4 out of 5. It's good. Go ahead and add to the collection. You get the PDF and the print on demand for like $12 right now. And with that, we're going to end this review. We hope somebody out there has found this useful, and we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.